Today, I would like to explain why Shohei Ohtani's two-way role as both a pitcher and a hitter is his absolute destiny. As a hitter, Shohei Ohtani has broken out of his long-term batting slump. He is gradually returning to his true self, and as a newly evolved Shohei Ohtani, he is performing brilliantly day after day. In the game against the Arizona Diamondbacks on June 2, Japan time, he racked up 3 hits, one of which was an extra base hit to deep left central field. The fact that he has started hitting the ball so incredibly well to the opposite field indicates that his overall condition is on the rise. Furthermore, in the 5th inning, although he was jammed by the very first pitch, an inside sinker from pitcher Eduardo Rodriguez, he still managed to drive it into center field for a base hit. Should we judge that specific batted ball as a mere miss hit? I absolutely do not see it that way. During that particular at-bat, since Ohtani was facing a left-handed pitcher, he was highly conscious of aggressive, early count hitting. If a left-handed pitcher gets ahead in the count, the probability of swinging and missing at a slider breaking away from him becomes significantly higher. In his new batting approach, careful adjustments have been made precisely to avoid striking out. By setting up at the plate without unnecessary tension and attempting to hit with both mental and physical composure, he can accelerate his bat speed smoothly without forcing it, allowing him to handle difficult pitches and secure hits. When a sweet pitch comes down the heart of the plate, he targets a home run just as he always has. In addition, I strongly sense that he is deeply focused on attacking early in the count so that he does not fall behind and put himself at a disadvantage. Previously, Ohtani used to strike out very frequently. However, in the recent game against the Diamondbacks, he recorded 3 hits, and his only out was a ground out to third base, with absolutely 0 strikeouts. That is an exceptionally positive trend. While avoiding strikeouts entirely is incredibly difficult, I find tremendous appeal in Ohtani's new batting style, which he has evolved to minimize strikeouts as much as possible. Because of this deliberate caution, there is a possibility that his ultra-long-distance home runs might decrease. However, baseball is not a competition to dispute the distance of a home run. As long as the ball clears the fence, it is a home run, and the runs scored from a home run are never determined by its distance. Therefore, even if Ohtani increases his contact rate in the future and the number of majestic, deep home runs decreases, that will not be a problem at all. In fact, it is highly desirable for him to transform into a hitter who strikes out far less frequently while continuing to hit home runs that reliably clear the fence, even if only by a narrow margin. As a leadoff hitter, his on-base percentage will rise, and in clutch situations, he can serve as a primary run producer to drive in runs. If he can crush mistakes over the wall, cut down on his strikeouts, and maintain this approach, nothing could possibly be better. A hitter who combines the qualities of Ichiro and Barry Bonds into one single player, that is exactly how I perceive Shohei Ohtani's new batting methodology. I believe his new approach still requires daily trial and error, but we must pay close attention to Ohtani's batting performance moving forward. He will undoubtedly showcase a brand of baseball that completely defies our imagination. Next, I would like to discuss not only Shohei Ohtani's batting, but also his fundamental role as a two-way player, performing both on the mound and at the plate. With the Dodgers, taking Shohei Ohtani's fatigue into consideration, there were several occasions where the team gave him a day off from hitting on the days he was scheduled to pitch. For the team, I believe that was a highly reasonable and excellent strategy. Resting a player to let them refresh and achieve better performance is extremely logical. However, in the case of Shohei Ohtani, although he experienced a prolonged batting slump earlier this season, that was simply the kind of slump that occurs once every few years, and slumps are something that every single player goes through. I firmly believe that the root cause of the slump was not a drop in his batting performance due to physical exhaustion. The proof lies in the fact that, as a pitcher, he was delivering outstanding performances on the mound and throwing quality starts time after time. Given that he possessed that much vibrant energy, it is highly improbable that his body was somehow exhausted only when he stood in the batter's box. I believe it was mental fatigue, specifically, brain fatigue. Last year, after the World Series concluded, he spent only a very brief off-season before immediately diving into preparations for the season's two-way adjustments, while also keeping his eyes fixed on preparing for the World Baseball Classic. Then, after the turn of the year, he went straight into personal workouts, followed by spring training. While advancing his two-way adjustments, he simultaneously prepared as a hitter for the WBC. He then participated in the tournament, blasting 3 home runs. Afterward, he rejoined the team, went through spring training once more, played in exhibition games and regular spring training games, continuously maintaining his intense two-way routine. And then came the opening of this regular season. This schedule alone is incredibly grueling. Yet, his physical conditioning was absolutely perfect, and even when he fell into a batting slump, he was showcasing superb pitching on the mound. Therefore, due to this superhuman, intense schedule starting from early spring, was it not his brain, rather than his body, that was utterly exhausted? Precisely because his brain was fatigued, he fell into a state where he could not successfully track and judge the pitches thrown by opposing pitchers as a hitter. This led to an increase in weakouts and strikeouts, causing his statistics to drop. Hitting is an inherently passive, reactive task where you must strike back at a ball delivered by the opposing pitcher. It begins entirely with the opponent's action, making it incredibly difficult. Pitching, on the other hand, is an active task that begins with the pitcher himself, allowing him to operate entirely at his own pace. What we can understand from this distinct difference is that when the action initiated with himself, he executed it beautifully. As a pitcher, he was producing outstanding results. However, his performance in the batter's box, which requires reacting to the opponent's initiative, fell into a slump. If his body had been physically exhausted, his pitching performance would have suffered as well. Yet, this year, Ohtani has shown brilliant pitching on the mound. It was only his batting statistics that suffered a prolonged decline and remained stagnant. Therefore, it is only natural to conclude that the faculties tied directly to the brain, such as his batter's eye, plate discipline, and the split-second decision-making of whether to swing or take a pitch, had temporarily crashed. Recently, he has broken out of those symptoms. He is now tracking the pitcher's deliveries perfectly, and we are regularly seeing hits, extra base hits, and home runs. Shohei Ohtani possesses far more experience operating as a two-way player than anyone else in the entire world, and he deeply understands how to manage his physical conditioning for it. Because of this, while the Dodgers' previous decision to rest him as a hitter on his pitching days aligns with the correct approach for an ordinary player, when it comes to restricting Shohei Ohtani's two-way duties, that management strategy might have actually been incorrect. I strongly feel that Ohtani is far more likely to establish his own rhythm and unlock his peak performance when he stays in the lineup for the game as a two-way player. We can view the batting slump witnessed this season as a necessary period of adjustment to refine his playing style at a major turning point in his career. We can safely conclude that he absolutely did not fall into a batting slump due to physical exhaustion from his two-way workload. When considering it from this perspective, moving forward, the best approach for the Dodgers' managerial strategy would be to deploy Shohei Ohtani as a two-way player on the days he pitches. I feel this is the absolute best format for Ohtani himself. Furthermore, when looking at the front office and business operations of the Dodgers, keeping the Japanese market in mind, Japanese fans are far more eager to watch the games when Shohei Ohtani plays as a two-way star. This generates an immense advertising effect, and the corporate sponsors will undoubtedly be thrilled. There is absolutely no downside to Ohtani appearing as a two-way player. The real question is how the Dodgers will guide him back to form if Ohtani falls into a prolonged batting slump again in the future. If his slump this time was not caused by physical fatigue, then forcing him to take days off will achieve very little. In fact, Ohtani himself mentioned that the turning point for his recovery from the batting slump was a positive sign he felt during an at-bat right before a scheduled day off. This allows us to deduce that his batting slump was never a physical ailment. For this reason, how the team handles him when he encounters a long-term batting slump in the future will be of utmost importance. My personal view is that precisely when Ohtani falls into a prolonged batting slump, the team should continue to utilize him heavily as a two-way player. I believe that physical rest is unnecessary for him. If both his pitching and hitting performances are deteriorating simultaneously, then rest would be required. However, if only his hitting is off, or only his pitching is off, a complete day off is not necessary. Instead, the Dodgers should simply instruct him, as a firm condition, not to repeat the exact same patterns of failure. He is a player who executes exactly what he is told to do. He always meets expectations. When Ohtani falls into a slump, his strikeouts increase, and his groundouts to first and second base become highly frequent. Therefore, when a slump occurs, the team should simply emphasize eliminating strikeouts and focusing on hitting the ball towards center and left field, even if those contact swings result in routine outs. After that, he will engage in his own trial and error and will absolutely discover a way to recover. That is precisely who Shohei Ohtani is. I have been watching Shohei Ohtani for a very long time, but this season was the first time I have ever witnessed him experience such a prolonged batting slump. Nothing like this has ever happened before. In this scenario, there are two distinct ways to interpret this situation. The first is physical decline. His body has aged, meaning the routine adjustments he previously relied on as a hitter are no longer effective. The second interpretation is that the time has come for him to elevate to an even higher phase of his career. In other words, the techniques that worked perfectly in the past have ceased to work, forcing him to find a breakthrough, acquire a brand new hitting mechanic, and once he masters that mechanic, he will display an even greater level of ability than ever before. I firmly believe it is the latter. That is exactly why, on this program, I have continuously maintained and asserted that Shohei Ohtani will absolutely go on a home run tear from this point forward. When a hitter adopts an approach aimed at raising their contact rate, they cannot expect massive distance on their home runs. However, as I stated earlier, as long as the ball clears the fence, it is a home run. The distance is never added to the scoreboard, so there is no need to worry about it at all. It is perfectly fine as long as the ball clears the wall, even if it is just barely. Instead, raising the contact rate and cutting down on the number of strikeouts and weakouts is what truly matters. By doing so, he can get on base to set up scoring opportunities, act as a primary run producer to drive in runners when they are on base, and if a home run comes along every now and then, that is the ultimate ideal. When looking at it this way, Shohei Ohtani is still very much evolving. And this two-way role is nothing less than his absolute lifeline as a professional athlete. Regardless of whether he is in peak form or struggling, playing as a two-way player at all times is precisely what serves as the ultimate source of his energy. Furthermore, I strongly feel that Shohei Ohtani's true purpose and identity exist precisely because he plays as a two-way player. In Major League Baseball, there are pitchers who possess greater skills on the mound than Shohei Ohtani. There are also hitters who possess greater skills at the plate than Shohei Ohtani. However, those individuals can only demonstrate elite ability in one single position. Shohei Ohtani can deliver top-tier major league performance as both a pitcher and a hitter simultaneously. That is the ultimate selling point of Shohei Ohtani. That is why we must arrive at the definitive conclusion that Shohei Ohtani's two-way role must never be stripped away. No matter how deep of a batting slump he is in, if he is performing excellently as a pitcher, he does not need rest. Conversely, even if his pitching statistics are struggling, if he is performing excellently as a hitter, he does not need rest. Allowing him to balance both roles and play every single day is what truly enables Shohei Ohtani to unleash his genuine, authentic power. Watching Shohei Ohtani perform as he successfully breaks out of his long-term batting slump has firmly convinced me of this truth. There is absolutely no need to rest his body on the grounds of a performance slump. His physical body is constantly maintained in peak condition. When a microscopic misalignment prevents him from showcasing his best performance, the solution is not forced rest, it is working collaboratively with the team to correct the issue and break out of the slump. I sincerely and strongly hope that the Dodgers will deeply cherish and respect his dedication to the two-way role, and continue to fully utilize his unique two-way talents to the absolute fullest. That is all for today. Thank you very much.